The Jamie and Chris Don't Be an Idiot podcast. The Jamie and Chris Don't Be an Idiot podcast.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Jamie and Chris Don't Be an Idiot. I'm Jamie. This is Chris. We got a kind of an interesting show, here, and we're kind of ad-lib a lot of this stuff. I have been noticing, and I guess I've noticed it for a long time, how society is kind of going into the shitter. And think about this. We build the most connected world in human history, and somehow everyone feels completely alone and completely wronged. And think about this for a second. We've got more ways to reach each other than ever before. And yet I watched a guy the other day have a full meltdown just trying to talk to an actual human at a customer service line. One person. That's all he wanted. And we've just accepted that. We decided people are the inconvenient part to this. You've got people generally believing their employer owes them something. Something for just showing up. Not performing, not for contributing, just for gracing the building with their presence. Like employment is a favor they do for you. We've stopped asking, how are you? And started asking, what do I deserve? And the answer is always everything from everyone immediately. So today we're going to talk about something that is kind of dear to my heart now because I see what's happening with society. How society forgot it's made of actual people. And how some of those people forgot they have to show up. Let's get to the show. All right, so let's talk about this first segment, which is society stopped caring for us. Customer service is now a maze designed to wear you out. It's companies that don't want to talk to you. They want you to give up. And the phone tree and the chat bots, your call is very important to us message, it's not true. It's just not there. The message you hear for 45 minutes, it's not an accident. That's a business decision made to frustrate you into silence and cheaper than hiring people to do that job. Think about this, how wild it is that the company you give your money to, when something goes wrong, they make you fix the problem, which I think we're all used to now. And then they just accept it, or you just give up, one of those. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this, Chris?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I mean, we've been seeing this coming for at least 20 years now. Companies, you've got these business decisions, and like you mentioned, and then you have these societal issues also going on. So, we've always been dealing with these phone mazes for a long time. People want to streamline the system, put you to the right person, the expert or so.
Right.
But then a lot of these companies, like some of these large telephone companies that I can think of, you call, you wait on hold for 45 minutes, and you get someone overseas who can barely understand you. You can barely understand them, but they're doing
Fred
it because
or
it's
Bob,
cheap,
right? And I'm surprised at how many overseas companies name their people American names.
Right, exactly.
I'm expecting to talk to Rajesh, and I get Bob.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm getting all of these. I'm getting solicitations all the time. Hey, we can do an AI customer service for you. So they're all trying to, enhance from the chatbot. They're all trying to make it streamlined, not have the people, and maybe that's an issue. Because especially if some of these companies are in some of these cities or states where all of a sudden they're saying we're going to have a $30 minimum wage.
Right.
How can you justify some of that stuff for some of the skill level on some of these calls and stuff?
Right.
So, there's the business decision. But it sure is cumbersome. It's frustrating.
And then you wonder if the business decision is the right one, because the frustration makes me not want to buy from that company again, or not want to keep the service that they're offering, or I don't know how many times I've been on these things and I've went, I'm done. I'm just canceling the service. I'm moving on.
I have to say, so when we look at the societal issue, when I go into like a fast food place and I get a kiosk, I'm digging that. I don't need to talk to the person behind the counter. And because a lot of times the
But
person
that's
behind the
also
counter
a
is
low,
frustrating.
and I'm not saying this to be insulting to anyone. That's a low-skilled job.
Right.
That, it's funny. Well, there's a couple things here, right? That's a low-skilled job where you're just picking fries, Coke, burger, right? But when you get into the higher technical,
Right.
technical jobs where it's like, oh my God, I can't figure out why my computer's crashing or
Right.
something like that. I mean, that is not where you move them to a kiosk.
You don't move them to a chat bot.
Yeah.
You don't move them through some phone maze or whatever. You need them to talk to an expert. And a lot of times I see it with like tech support kind of things. They'll
Sure.
be like, well, I'm going to have to move you to level 2 or level 3, whatever it may be.
I've gotten
right?
that as well, yeah.
Which is an okay thing. You're talking to a real person. That person said, hey, I'm just entry level tech support. I can help you with something basic. But then they can escalate it, which is fine. You still feel okay on that. It's not like the ideal situation.
Right.
The ideal situation is to get your answer
Immediately
fixed right away, right?
And the thing is, I mean, how many hours are we spending wasting our time? And I can tell you, like, my IRS thing that I was talking about, right? It was like one thing after another. No one could ever help me. No one could ever. And I'm like, I have wasted 6 people's time that I've gotten through to.
Right.
And never gotten an answer for this.
And didn't
right?
get an answer. And so, we as a society get used to dealing with all this stuff, and it just takes all the human elements out of it, right?
Sure.
And then when you do get someone, usually they're not even that personable.
Right.
You get someone
Or
who's
knowledgeable.
just checked out.
Or not
Right?
or knowledgeable, right. Or checked out, yeah. And that's another thing, the quiet quitters or whatever that is.
Right, exactly. Or they're they're kind of brought into this community that society says, well, do what's on your job description and nothing more.
Right.
It's like that's part of this like workplace culture that gets really infested.
Well, and I always heard it when I still employ people, but and they go, well, I'm not paid for that. Mm-hmm. And I can remember one, I own an assembly, and he came and he was rather new, a couple months, right? He turned out to be a real thorn. But one of the things he was quoting as my wife was helping assemble, a product, and I was helping, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not getting paid for this." Well, you are getting paid. You came.
You're on
here
the
to
clock.
You did a job. If you didn't want to do a job, you shouldn't have came and applied.
That's why a good job description and ends with "and anything else required of you."
Right. Right. Maybe I should have typed that on everything and said.
Right.
But I think pretty much in the interview, I go, "Hey, we all pitch in here.
Right. You're like
it doesn't
a
matter if you're the
booming
president
kind
of
of
the
company
company or And frankly, I cleaned the bathrooms of the company anyway. So,
Right.
because it was like, for everyone else, that's demoralizing, right? But for me, who started the company, that's not so demoralizing, right?
Right, exactly.
Like, whatever, I don't care. I clean up shit.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, I always think like when some people just want to sit around, like the quiet quitter that you're talking about, you're sitting around, you're not doing anything above and beyond. How do you expect to get promoted? How do you expect to like build a career or anything? Even if it's at a job where you're, fast food place. It's like, well, I'm not paid to mop the floor or whatever, and
Right.
I'm just supposed to be here working the cash register.
Right.
It's like just do a little more, and you're going to get the good reference out of it. Your boss is going to see that. Maybe get
it's
a raise
funny.
out of it.
It's like and when I was employed by other people, right? My thing was to do the job better than you. Mm-hmm. And one, to learn every aspect of that job so that I become so valuable to your organization that, there's no way you could fire me.
Right, exactly.
And you've got to promote me because I know everyone else's job too.
Right. And so there's a problem with a lot of people who just walk in and think, oh, I'm just the greatest thing. This company won't survive without me, right?
Oh, yeah.
You saw plenty of those folks.
I had plenty of those. I had one guy who was like, "You can't fire me." Well, I just did,
Yeah. And I always think that, if you sit around and you watch the clock, That's like torture, but if you're like fully in the game and like
fully vested, right?
Show up on the busy day and just hustle, and the clock just goes fast.
I can tell you, it's funny because I started in cooking in restaurants, right? And I remember those days when we were swamped. It was like I felt like I was there for 15 minutes because the day went so fast,
so quickly, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like the Monday night at the restaurant,
right?
When you're just sitting there watching. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll clean some glasses. Wait, that's not my job description. Or
Right.
something.
Oh man. So as we kind of look at what makes us not content in society, we probably should look at social media first. And, one thing to say is, the algorithm is not your friend. Every major social platform is built on one thing, and it's to keep you on the app as long as possible. The fastest way to do this isn't to make you feel good. It's to make you feel something intense like outrage or fear or jealousy. Those keep you scrolling. Contentment makes you put the phone down. So the feed you see every day is specifically engineered to make you feel angry and anxious. And then we wonder why everyone is angry and anxious. And it's funny because, my kids do this, right? They're like, oh, I'm so anxious about it. And I'm like, anxious? I'm anxious about everything, but I mean, this is the way they're baiting us. They're casting the line, and we as dumb fish keep biting that line.
So how old were your kids when you first got them a cell phone?
Oh man,
or like an iPod, I think.
Yeah, I think I think we'd say the iPod. I'd say they were 10.
About 10.
Yeah.
So that's about the same for my kids, and then like cell phones once they got into middle school. Which, I think a lot of people, I mean, that seemed like the standard, at least at the time. I think a lot of people, especially now with some of these states, Florida is leading the way on restricting kids from getting at social media. I think New Mexico's working on that now too.
I think that's a great idea.
Europe is
although
definitely
my kids aren't on social media very much.
So, well, that's the weird thing. Then maybe they're not on your social media, right? I mean, it's because there's so many different social medias.
Right.
I remember hearing one kid say, "Well, parents ruined Facebook, so they don't go on Facebook as much."
Right.
But that's a trap. I mean, this isn't just obviously a kid thing, but these kids are kind of growing up with this all this crap that comes through social media, and they get very they may get anxious. They're watching other people there, but just like adults too, people like go through the stuff. They do that doom scroll thing. They say, "Oh, everything's so great in my life." And
every morning.
Then they get so frustrated and they like feel like losers. They feel isolated. Oh, I only had 2 likes on my post or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so it's such
that dopamine, response to
and
it.
so I always say I don't really do social media, but I'm kind of glad I don't because I hear about all these issues that come from it. But you're good with it because you have a lot to brag about. But but still,
I don't necessarily call it bragging. I mean, I don't know.
But then the people fight with each other
I've gotten
too, right?
a lot less on like putting shit on social media now. Especially I think a lot of people know who I am anymore. Like around me, and I'm like, I don't really want to like, I don't know. I don't want them to get the wrong feeling.
There's the other social media that's full of misinformation, and then the algorithm, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's like you start watching, like, say you watch some like crackpot or something, they're going to start feeding you all this other crackpot stuff, and that could spiral downward. I mean, look at some of these idiots who want to go out and like kill the president. These guys are
floors me.
They're nuts.
Your life is worth so little to you,
and they get pulled in. These are probably
because if you don't think
people,
you're going to get caught,
right,
you're crazy. I mean, like the guy who murdered the exec from.
Oh, the United
Healthcare exec,
right.
And then, what gets me on the other side
he becomes a social media star with some of these nutcases.
The other side of this is, why are you people thinking that this guy's good?
Right.
He just murdered someone's father, someone's, husband, someone's, none of this stuff makes sense. But, this is what corporate,
and
this
that's
is what
gets fed into
this
it,
corporate media is doing. It's feeding this crap, this crap society. And at one point I could say, I could say we headed in the right direction, but I'm telling you, we're in the wrong direction at this
because
point.
in so many ways it is the Wild West, and the algorithms but just push it. So if you're watching like some Nazi stuff or some communist stuff, or
Right. It'll
some
start
Antifa
pushing it to
stuff,
your-
it just keeps on throwing,
Right, right.
reinforcing these perspectives,
Right.
And there's no check on it,
Yeah.
and so that's why all of a sudden these social media companies. Even like when you see about these like street takeovers and stuff, it's like they get on there, they pull these people into the wrong way, and it's very anti-societal type of feeds.
Sure.
It's like no wonder why we have so many problems with a lot of
and the
folks, right?
ignorance of society to buy into whatever. I saw marches in Chicago the other day, and they're pulling kids out of schools.
Right.
To go march in these things.
Does that make you
and
angry?
then you get the guy who's interviewing these kids, and they have no effing clue what they're talking about.
Right.
So you're watching all this BS in your feed,
As being
and
funded
you
by
don't
these
understand.
communists,
Yeah, and you don't
outside of the
understand what you're really marching for.
There's an old quote that someone said once, that no one ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of the American people, right? So,
well, and then you look at what do they call that? The convenient idiot or whatever. Or,
yeah.
like you're just a convenient idiot to these guys, right? Corporate empathy. Okay, so let's talk about corporate empathy here. The we can do better kind of attitude that these companies say, oh, we can do better. We're for the environment. We're for this. We're for that. We're to help you,
Yeah, I think a lot of this stems out of, I think it's called Section 230, which was this rule that was, this law that was passed back, 20-some years ago for online content to relieve them of liability.
Oh, their responsibility for anything.
Right. So they say, well, we're just the tool
society
for other people to publish.
Deterioration.
So we can let them let people say whatever they want. We have immunity, basically.
Oh, sure.
With that mentality, but that mentality went really,
this is kind of the
down
thing with like
sewer.
Facebook and all that. Even if you're
right,
if the negative contents there are the lying contents,
if I
there,
libel you, they're not responsible.
Right.
Things like that.
And it's like there should be some type of responsibility to police. That responsibility would be tough.
There is, especially when you start thinking about these street takeovers and things like that. These people are using their tool to organize.
Right.
They should have. I mean, obviously, there's plenty of AI stuff out there, a lot of tools out there where you should say, we can watch this. If we see people organizing, we're going to shut this page down immediately.
Sure.
It's not that hard. I mean, look at what they did during COVID.
You go past that, like, is it for a good thing or a bad thing? And then you have to, you make the judgment call, right? And we see that society can't make a judgment call to save their lives anymore.
And there is, so it is kind of a double-edged sword in certain ways, because you can say, well, you can build the tools, but look what they did during COVID, right? I mean, they're like, if you said anything like, COVID's a sham or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You had the Biden
They were happy
administration
to shut you
forcing these
down.
people down, right?
Yep.
Even Trump, like, people who were like pro-Trump or whatever, like, you had the government like influencing these people who are willing to participate in this. I remember hearing some quote from some community person in Facebook, some community regulator, who thought this was the greatest thing to give them the power to shut any conservative down.
Oh, sure.
But then there's also the step where, like, once you do take the steps to start controlling, the companies, I think, were legitimately concerned. Like, okay, so if we do have the authority to shut certain people down,
sure,
we in essence do become editors ourselves, and does that open us up for liability? So that is a legal thing that would have to be hashed out. I mean, you give them some, if you give them anything, does that make them content editors and therefore make them liable, responsible for everything else that goes on their system?
Yeah.
So that is tough. And but I think that
you're talking about a lot of policing,
It's a lot of policing, but that's where computers can pick up the slack, right?
Yeah.
It's especially with AI now.
But then with freedom of speech, we're allowed to say whatever we want to say.
We are,
as soon as you shut that down,
as long as we're not causing harm.
Right.
You know,
I can't go. I'm going to go murder the president.
Right. So you can't say stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean that's going to throw up a red flag, and it should throw up a red flag.
And I think just like illegal activity, you can't encourage illegal activity. Like, you can't say, okay, we're all going to meet at this place right here, and we're going to like raid the store. We're going to raid all the stores. Or
Although
whatever.
they're doing it.
That's happening. So that's got to be protected, or that's got to be not protected speech, because that's committing criminal acts.
Right.
You're encouraging others.
And that
just
happened. That happened to my wife actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, she was at a TJ Maxx. Yeah. She's a Maxxinista.
Okay.
But and she was in there, and she said people started coming in, and they were yelling and whatever, creating like distractions all over the store. And then a whole bunch of kids took a bunch of shit and started running out the door. Yeah, and she said she felt completely unsafe in that situation.
Holy
which
cow.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And that
Times
happens
are
here.
tough when you're stealing from TJ Maxx.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is the ignorance of our society, right?
Yeah.
These are the lower IQ people, right?
Exactly.
They wouldn't be listening to a show like like ours.
Don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. So the loneliness that comes up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Loneliness.
the social media creates all this loneliness, and obviously social media is not the only problem, or cause of a lot of these problems, but it does, people feel left out, kind of like we were talking about a little while ago. It's like they just feel, they see everyone else, we went out and we partied and stuff. It's like one of the things I always tell people, I say, if you're going to be posting on social media, even if it's once a week, just don't make it like, hey, we're at a bar having a beer, because you know what? If that's all you're posting, over a year's time, people are going to be like, damn, this guy's a lush, right? I mean, it's just a little snapshot. It could be like one beer a week. But if you take your picture every time and say, hey, cheers, toast, or whatever.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's like...
that statement is so, is so interesting in so many ways to me, right?
Because you can see a lot of people saying, man, all these people are having all this fun.
Because the only time we post stuff is when we're like...
having fun or whatever.
Having fun somewhere out.
Right.
And so anybody who would look at us would go... oh my God, these guys are drunks, right?
Right.
When in all reality, we have like one drink when we're out, and that was it.
Exactly, because people
and we
aren't
don't
posting
drink at home.
People aren't posting like, oh, I got this foreclosure notice today or something.
But the only thing they see is this picture of like, oh, look, they're on a boat drinking. Well, yeah, you don't know. And also, there's water in that drink, or
there's water in that
there's
drink.
There's water in that cup, right?
Right.
But it just, it's kind of funny. But, the U.S. Surgeon General in 2000, what was it,
2023, I think it was.
It was a epidemic is loneliness.
Right.
And I see it. I mean, because all this electronics, all the things that we're doing in society.
And that was probably exacerbated by COVID.
Yeah.
Because this is 2023. Because this is the hard
this was
COVID.
just coming off of COVID, right?
Yeah, it's still in the middle of COVID.
So it's like, I mean, of course loneliness is going to be,
right.
You're not leaving your house. They're telling you you're doomed, which my wife thought we were doomed. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I'm like...
Hey, what's really funny during COVID, because I think the people who probably weren't affected as much, I saw these like Catholic schools. They said, we're still going to have in-person schools. I know that there were some counties in the area that we live. They said, you know what, we're not enforcing any COVID. So if you had friends in those counties and you're going through Facebook or whatever, and you see, oh man, these guys are out partying every week.
Right.
They're having fun. And you know what? The Catholic schools were fine. Those counties were fine. You know, it's,
imagine that.
Right? So
yeah. Imagine government being wrong for 1 second.
Right, exactly.
Oh, right. That's like usual. Yeah.
So, we come up with this personless, this like, nothing's personable. Everything's kind of digital. And so
like fake
people
connections.
are isolated.
Yeah.
And, plus they're trying to like, create these egos for themselves and stuff. And, so we get this entitlement society besides the social media.
Right.
You get the participation trophies.
Right.
You get all these things like, well, we're not going to grade A, B, C, D, F, or whatever.
Right.
We're just gonna do pass fail or however they do it. It's like all of a sudden everything's watered down. You're special. the umbrella parents are like running behind them, making sure everything's taken care of, making sure they
Right.
feel special, right? So what happens then?
All right, so showing up to the job, it's the starting line. It's not the whole job, you know. It's it feels like it's a growing belief in the workforce today that that we should be grateful as employers, and I'm saying we in
Right.
general, right? Where I'm not talking about me. You know, by you just walking in the door, and done something that is you know, or showing up and going, but the real battle is showing up. Showing up is not the contribution. It's the bare minimum. You know,
Right.
what you do when you get to the job is the contribution.
And isn't that funny? Because you know, there was an old saying. I think it was a Woody Allen saying, or not that he's very credible on much these days.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. But anyways, he used to say like, you know, 80% is you know, success is 80% of success is just showing up.
Yeah.
And in certain ways that kind of used to be it, but you know, now it's just this whole thing like, well, that's not my job description, whatever. And this is where you have the struggle.
I could tell you, I heard that more than anything. Oh, you know, that's not part of my job. It's all part of your job.
I know, right? If you're going to be a part of a team, right? And so and that's where the struggle between the employer and the employee gets in, because the employer is like, you know, I don't want to deal with this crap. You know, I can automate your position.
Right.
And that's where a lot of this is going.
coming
With
down,
AI.
right?
You know, it's like you think about, I think Amazon is looking at getting rid of like 300,000 warehouse workers because they're going to have robotic, you know, robots, you know, fed by AI going out to pick products out of the warehouse, which to me seems like a smart thing, you know,
Sure.
because so anyways, but you know, these attitudes that people are getting are going to lead them to the unemployment line.
Right.
Because-
And look, I get it. If you're underpaid, undermined, disrespected at work, that's real. I get it. And it's worth addressing.
Because there are a lot of bad managers out there. Obviously.
Yeah. Oh, and there is. I mean, yeah, I'm not even going to get started with that. But, you know, the answer to a bad job is to find a better one to fix the problem.
Right, right.
You know?
And especially with the younger generation, because they're known for hopping from job to job
Yeah,
to job.
and it's not to coast and call it quits, right? It's not, you know, the quiet quitting. That's not, you know, that isn't a revolution here, right? You know,
That's not
it's
gonna
just
build a
quitting
career.
with no extra steps.
Right, right.
With extra steps, I mean.
And most people, you know, the most successful people, I think I've heard you say it before too. It's like, you know, I'm not just going to do what my competition does. I'm going to work harder than my competition.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And if someone says, okay, my competition are my coworkers, you know, if I want to get a raise, if I want to get, you know, preferred treatment for like whatever, vacations, whatever, if I want to get a promotion, you know, you got to be motivated to like take that leap. It's
Make
not just sitting there,
yourself
right?
valuable.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
you're the only thing that's promoting yourself. You
Right,
know?
exactly.
If you make yourself so invaluable to a corporation or to someone else, they're going to see it.
right.
And they're going to work on it. I mean, you know, my one company that I have, I mean, now we've went through so many bad managers and we have such good managers now. It's amazing at how good managers are over the bad ones.
Right.
You know, for everyone involved, the employee, you know, the owners, the
employees are happy.
yeah.
They're doing their job
Oh yeah,
happily.
and
but,
they come
yeah.
to work whistling. I mean,
Right.
not, you know, I'm just saying, and fictitiously, right? You know,
And so that's where, you know, you know, there's got to be that, you know, that kind of like middle ground between the employer and the employee in a lot of ways, just so the employer understands that they just can't like run roughshod over the employees and just treat them like crap.
No,
You know,
right.
you gotta, because in the end, that doesn't make the company productive. You know, it's like you got to be strategic as a manager. You got to get your people rallied and working hard and happy to do that, right?
Right,
You know,
absolutely.
and that goes through pay. You know, it's just like, you know, kind of going back to the fast food thing. It's like there are a couple of fast food places that I've asked the people who work there. I'm like, so why do you like working here? And they'll be like, well, you know, they're really accommodating to my school schedule.
Yeah, I've heard
I
that.
get $1 more an hour.
Yep.
You know, it's like, so you feel like you're treated well versus the other people. You know, I remember going to one fast food restaurant once and you could tell that they didn't treat their people well. I go to the drive-thru and like some lady like goes on the speaker. She's like, "We're closed today. No one showed up for work."
Yeah.
There's a huge difference. If you can't, if you're in that business, you should be able to see that. It's
Yeah. I get it. I
Right.
get it. And, it is about the holistic view of the society, right? From the management to the employees, right? And I have to say, I didn't realize that when I was a new business owner, but I come to realize that as business went on and as things went on, of the value of a good employee.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Exactly. And so, and those employees will help you build your systems.
Right.
And maintain the systems.
And they're not just there to collect a paycheck, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
like, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of those employees that are there to just, collect a paycheck.
Punch
And
the
it's
clock,
funny
yeah.
because I also used to get the thing like, oh, I don't answer emails at night or something. And I'm like, that's what makes us different.
Right.
That's what separates us. And I had one employee that was like, oh, even if it's an emergency, don't call me on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
And
That's
I'm like,
ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and he would never show up for weekends. He would never go up and above. And this guy worked for me for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is funny because
He was a fungus too.
You have people, when they're really motivated, and I notice like some of the most successful people I know, I'm getting emails from them at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people need to be slave to their
No,
jobs.
absolutely not.
But
That's
the
not what I'm
gears are
saying,
always
right?
turning, in
But-
certain ways. They can like dial back and go out and have fun. But, they have a thought at 2 a.m. and they're like, I got to let them know about this. I got to share my thought or something.
Yeah,
right?
well, and on my side, right, I tend to forget things if I, I wake up at 3 a.m. every night, either if I got to go take a leak or whatever, but it's still like, and I'm up for usually an hour after that thinking, because that's when all this stuff hits you in the middle of the night. And especially for me, it hits me in the middle of the night and I go, oh, I could do this, or I could do that, or I should probably tell someone about this. And that's when I'll email
Right.
people. And I remember a long time ago.
That's when you have the fewest distractions.
You're right.
Right?
And I remember people going, what were you doing at 4 a.m.?
I know, right?
And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
you may have said it to me. Like, what are you doing emailing me at 4 a.m.?
Right, exactly.
And I'm like, well, that's what I'm thinking, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, and it just shows the different participation levels, right? Of the societal employee versus the employer versus,
And so the trick with some of our younger folks, when you were growing up, when I was growing up, like almost all of my friends had jobs.
absolutely,
it's like
absolutely.
a lot of the kids these days, especially in suburbia, I'm not sure about other places necessarily, but yeah, a lot of them really didn't want jobs. And, with my kids, I was like, hey, you want to get a job? That's great. But, you've got soccer, you've got track, you got whatever going on. And so I'm like, my thought is, idle time is the devil's workshop.
I agree.
So if you're a teenager, if you're not doing band or, some athletics or whatever, maybe a part-time job would be great.
Yeah.
It's like you're filling in that
I can
time.
tell you, when I was a teenager at 16, my buddy worked as a dishwasher at a seafood restaurant. And he's like, hey, I could get you a job here. And I was like, all right.
Free fried clams. Yeah.
But I can remember, I'm like, I would go in. I loved washing dishes. I did. I still like to wash dishes.
It's like you're earning a paycheck.
Yeah,
right?
and I was excited to show up, and I got a letter of recommendation from the guy, the chef at that restaurant, because I moved up to like line cook,
right,
and I was
right.
like excited to move up to line cook, right?
And so part of the problem that I think starts feeding into like a lot of the issues that we have today with the lack of personality at a lot of companies and stuff is that a lot of these kids, they weren't like really pushed, especially during
Right.
COVID, right?
Right.
It's like,
I agree.
we're canceling athletics.
I agree.
So just sit at home, don't work, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like they push you through school. And then it's like they don't really have a work ethic once they get into the workplace.
Sure.
I mean, it's that's scary, right? Because
Right.
I mean that really does build a good foundation. I mean, it's one of your first things of areas of responsibility outside of school.
Yeah, it definitely builds character in kids that I can see today that have had a job.
Because you hear about a lot of the people who self-made people. They like started working early and they worked hard and they just built. Great stuff, right? It's like, as opposed to, it's funny because I've heard like statistics where they say, oh, a lot of these like trust fund babies and stuff. Usually a lot of times their wealth will go down as they go through life because they spend all their time, they went to great schools, but then they spent all the time at coffee shops or whatever.
Sure.
They weren't out there saying, oh, I'm going to create the next such and such,
right? Right. There's no motivation.
Things were too cushy.
My motivation was I was broke.
Right. And look at, my younger kid, he's determined to make a mark on the world.
Yeah.
And it's great. He's like, yeah, I just want to hang out with people who are ready to make their mark.
Yeah, I love the drive there, right?
I know.
But it's like we've like masked the drive, and we've done it through like the participation trophy hangover, right? It's
exactly.
like, hey, everyone gets a trophy. No, society doesn't work that way, people.
I know, right?
You don't get a trophy,
right?
Yeah.
Well, if we did elections like that, what would the politicians think of that? The politicians in power,
right?
Well, we're going to give the election to the person who came in second.
Right. Yeah. Hey, don't
See
worry.
if that works. Right?
Yeah.
It's because they showed up.
Yeah, let's get off the whole like. Well, what your kid showed up. No, your kid didn't do dick.
Mm-hmm.
Your kid. Sorry, no trophy. No, and I remember like. I was a big cross country runner, right? I was a track runner too. And it was like, man, after third, they didn't give you anything. So it was like, you were always working for third.
Right.
Right. Because I want some,
you want a place.
I want some decoration to bring home, right? To hang in the room.
Want some bling.
Yeah. I want some bling, Yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying. And so, I mean, it's, between that, you've got the, you got this pot culture that's pushing itself onto people. And, I think studies show that, the person who goes home and has some pot after work or whatever, that they're not a problem, but the habitual pot smoker, which seems to be all over the place these days. They wake up in the morning and they spark
Wake
up.
and bakers.
And, then they show up at work and then I think that adds, there's solid evidence that shows that kind of person does not perform that well at work.
Right. Yeah. I think it's clearly less of them perform than more of them.
Right.
And then, but you've also got, victimhood has become a full-time, identity too.
Right.
With these people,
That's very true. And that's pushed by politicians also.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, vote for me because these people are screwing you. Right. And it's like, you're not getting what you're due.
Right. It's proof that the world's against them specifically. Hey, I'm going to tell you, the world's against all of us.
Right. Because it's each man for himself in a lot of ways.
All of us.
But, with that becomes, the good citizen still recognizes how to respect those with less and how to serve their communities too.
Right, right. And it's the achieving level after that. Like, I mean, let's throw one out there, right? Oh, billionaires, they're horrible people, right? Well, who do you think employs you?
Who employs you? Who gives billions of dollars to charities? Right.
Who pays taxes? Who pays? And don't tell me billionaires don't pay taxes. I get it.
They pay at least 50% of the federal taxes.
Right.
But then you think about everything else. Think about all the real estate taxes and sales taxes.
Sales tax.
You buy these big luxury items and you're paying huge taxes, right?
Right.
But when we get, I think some of this stuff is like apathy towards customer service and stuff. I think one of the things that happens is that you lose an attention to detail.
Yeah.
And you've had a few examples of that too.
Yeah. Well, lately, I don't know if most of I fly airplanes. So the funny thing is, and this happened to me, and then there's one that directly affected my daughter. They come to work, they show up, and they collect a paycheck. But it's like in my plane, I took it for a 50-hour annual to keep up with the warranty that's on the engine. And I fly it over to Madison, Wisconsin, over that way. And I go out, and they're doing the inspection after I just had an oil change 20 hours ago. And the guy's like, I come back, and he goes, "Oh, we found a rag in your engine." And he's like, "It was next to the exhaust. That burns at 1,000 degrees." So when you look at it, the mechanic who left the rag in there, which when I went there, I was like, "Do you guys have the cowling off?" And they're like, "No, we put it back on." And dumb me went, I always look at it after they do work on my plane, right? Just to inspect it, make sure everything's back on.
Next time.
Oh yeah. And I went, okay, you know what? They did it, which is always a bad attitude for a pilot. And so when I got to the 50-hour oil change, they were like, "Yeah, there's a rag in the engine. It was next to something that burns at 1,000 degrees." And I'm like, the guy could have killed me. And he could have killed everyone else in the plane. So I brought it over to the mechanic shop here on the airport that did it. And I said, I want you to look at this and tell me what's wrong with this picture. And he's like, there's a rag next to it. I go, "Well, this was your shop." And the mechanic walked up, and he goes, and I have to say, I'm giving credit to where credit's due here. I'll never take my plane there again. They've lost my business. But the mechanic looked at me and he said, "This is definitely my fault." And he apologized profusely. But I'm still alive today. And I may have not been if that thing would have caught fire. The biggest thing on an airplane is just an internal fire, because there's nothing you can do. The cockpit fills up with smoke.
Right.
And, you have to figure out how to get that thing on the ground as quick as possible. So
what happens in a situation like that? Do you pull the parachute, or you just try to land?
On this plane, I could pull the parachute, but I do have a fire extinguisher. But the fire extinguisher has to be short bursts. Because
how do you reach the engine?
Well, you don't. It's coming through the firewall is what would happen. But if the engine's on fire, you got problems. So then, a couple weeks ago when I was on vacation, my daughter calls and says there's a thumping sound in her car. And she said she called the mechanic shop, and they're like, "Oh, we just rotated your tires, blah, blah, blah." So she drove around with this thing thumping, and we're like, and I'm out of town. I'm in a different country. And we're like, "Take it to someone." So she takes it in, and the mechanic shop, and I'm going to say Kenosha Toyota, because I am calling them out. Kenosha, Wisconsin Toyota. Basically put 4 wheels back on, hand tighten the lugs on the front one, and the tires were coming off. The wheels were coming off.
Scary.
Yeah, could have killed her.
Because it's not like she lives in that neighborhood.
We're all shirking our responsibilities because we didn't get paid enough. We didn't get paid enough, so we killed someone, right? We didn't get paid enough.
Or maybe,
we all got a participation trophy. So
I think one of the other issues
way
that
to show
happens...
up for killing someone.
Right. I think one of the other things that happens is one of the problems today is the smartphones.
Totally.
We're so attached to our smartphones. What if the guy's like, put on lug nuts? He's like, "Oh, okay, I'm just gonna take this. I'm gonna just do this text real quickly."
Instagram.
He's gonna like post something, or he's gonna send a text, and then he gets distracted, and then he's just like, "Yeah, I think everything's good over there." So, and then he walks away, right?
That's why they say when you're inspecting an aircraft, you never break. You never stop. You go from one side,
stay focused,
all the way around that aircraft. If something happens, you start from the beginning again.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Especially with something so serious.
Yeah.
Lug nuts are obviously the same thing.
Totally.
I would be so freaked out if like my tires were like falling off.
Right. And she had no clue.
Right.
And I get it. And I'm not saying this because she's female, but she's female. And she doesn't get cars. She doesn't understand that. And I wasn't around. I actually had a friend of mine handle it that he kind of went at him. But I cannot believe you did not have the gall to double check it. And you know what? When I put my lug nuts, and I do most of my mechanic work here in the hangar, and it's like when I do that work, I go through and I double check all tires. All tires, all of them.
And then do you like drive them 1,000 miles and check them again ever? Or?
I don't
I see some
usually
places
because
that do
usually, I mean, I'll drive them like a day and check them.
Okay.
Because that'll be enough to loosen them up.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, you definitely want to go through it a couple times. But yeah.
Okay.
But that comes to the whole thing as what we were saying before. I feel like people feel like I don't get paid enough to care, right? I don't get paid enough.
You don't get paid enough.
Yeah. How much is enough?
And that's
right?
where that social. Then they like go.
And you
go
took
off
the
to
job.
social media because that's more important.
Yeah, you took the job, so the pay's on you, buddy.
Right. The employer's committing to pay you.
Yeah.
You need to commit your time.
Yeah, and this is a good statement. There's a difference between knowing your worth and thinking the world owes you a living just for being alive.
I do remember.
One is self-respect, and the other is just being exhausting.
And I think teenagers, people, adolescents, even up until like at least 25 or so, you get this problem with these attitudes with younger folks, obviously, and the Greeks and Romans, wrote about it too, where they were like, they would criticize the youths for their attitudes and stuff. But I remember growing up, it's like, hearing that kind of attitude.
Well, it's funny, the guy, the mechanic that worked on my plane, he was probably 40.
Right. And so,
I mean, the youth, we have a problem there, but we have a societal problem.
40 is kind of the new 20, maybe.
Yeah. I'd say he was 40.
Because people are maturing later.
Late 30s, right.
Yeah, but they just get so addicted. I just think about the smartphones, you got a toxin. It's just like, I mean, I'm sure it frustrates you. You drive down the road and it's like someone's going 10, 15 miles under the speed limit and they're in the left lane. And you're like, how can someone, it's like one of those things where you just have to pass them and you got to look at the person just to see what this monster looks like.
Always on there.
And they're always like,
I had one today. She's in the hammer lane and I'm like, everyone's trying to get around you, lady. And I go by and she's like,
right, give it up. It's
put the goddamn thing down,
or use a voice control or something.
That's why your phones are hooked into your cars now.
And when people are doing, when people live like that, those are the same folks who are probably same kind of folks who are leaving rags on your engine.
Yeah, and they're the ones who think society's out for them, right? When they crush the car in front of them.
Well, I didn't mean to do that.
Right.
It's right.
So where did this whole thing come from, right? We talked a little about
umbrella parents.
Well, we talked a little about the phones, the marijuana use, the society, pointing that everyone else is the problem and we aren't.
Right.
We talk about there's a parental shift. Somewhere in the last 30 years. I'm going to be prepared for. It used to be. I'm going to be prepared for the hard world, right? Now it's like, I'm going to protect you from feeling hard things, right? I remember, it goes the whole like rub dirt in it kid, right?
Right.
You fall down and you're like, don't you freaking cry. Don't you freaking cry. Rub dirt in that. I come from the rub dirt in it society, right?
Hey, it's funny because they talk about, not to keep on talking about the younger generation, but the
you don't like the younger generation.
They do say, as a parent of kids who are just getting out of that younger generation, they say that from like about 2011 or so, the kids who like started using social media right around that point. These kids are going to be facing some challenges where they may not be as smart as their parents. They may not be as successful as their parents because in all the generations before, for the most part, the newer generation was always smarter and more successful. Because obviously we keep on building on technology and we keep on building on this knowledge base, which keeps obviously making us better. But now it's like, the smartphones have really, even though they're playing with great technology, there's so many pitfalls and taboo areas that it hinders their growth as people.
Oh, I believe
know?
so. I think it keeps them immature. But talking about this, preparing your kids for hard times, right? One produces adults who can handle adversity. The other produces adults who are blindsided by it and furious that it exists.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
right.
They're
Because
like,
we keep on
I'm so upset. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As a world leader, our country as a world leader, a lot of people really just can't imagine different living conditions. It's like when you start pulling away all the luxuries that we have as people compared to send them back like 80 years, let them try to live like that.
Right.
And it's like then you start feeling like my grandparents, probably your grandparents, dealt with the Depression, and it was like, that was their mindset was so smart in so many ways because they had to live through tough times.
Yeah.
And they understood.
Well, and this comes back to, these marches, these people that are like standing up for like, we have it so hard, right? And the way I look at it is, and I've spent a lot of time in other countries, and I give them a month to live in another country.
Right.
And
Not
I'm not
Western
talking
Europe.
I'm talking exactly.
Right.
Not Western Europe. I'm talking India, Asia, anywhere. China, again, Asia, anywhere. And then come back and tell me, you have it tough.
Right.
And that the U.S. sucks and America sucks. And what America produces and sucks, and capitalism sucks.
That's why so many of like the best entrepreneurs in America tend to be these younger immigrants who came from these disadvantaged
that have
backgrounds.
already felt what these
corrupt government brings.
Children
don't
have, that don't understand because they've never done it.
Right.
Exactly. I've seen the divide between complete poverty and wealth.
Right.
And
their math is so bad because they think, well, if we just take all of Elon Musk's money and Bill Gates' money, we can feed the whole world and everything will be all good moving forward.
Right.
Like that'll happen, right?
Right. Well, we got to have someone to produce the food and produce the other stuff.
Right.
And it's like, and they just don't want to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the real problem here. It's a race to the bottom. Everybody loses, right?
Right.
Both sides are true. Society generally stopped investing in people, and a lot of people generally stopped investing in society. And now each side uses the justification to keep going, right? So they're playing you people, Why should I care? Nobody else cares about me. Common quote, right? Why should we invest in people who don't contribute? Round and round. Meanwhile, the whole thing gets worse.
So mutual obligation is how civilization survives. We talk about, it's each man for themselves in a lot of ways, but you also have to have a sense of community and being a good steward of the world. So, and I would always tell my kids, I'm like, you got to grow up to be a citizen of the world. And it's not that you're saying, okay, everyone needs free stuff, but there is an acknowledgement that some people have faced rough circumstances.
Right. They have bigger hurdles than what
exactly
we do.
And so, to build a good community, you want to try to help those out who are genuinely, honestly in their positions. You don't want to reward bad behavior.
Right.
If someone's screwing up intentionally and causing problems or whatever, you don't necessarily want to help those, but you see the other person who's like collateral damage to a lot of other bad stuff, you'd be like, what, this person's got a good heart and I want to help them out because I think this person can grow to be a great person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's where, so many churches can do great things because they're out there reaching into different communities.
Sure,
they're doing food kitchens, things like that. And, I think some of the best kids I've dealt with are those who say, you know what, even like one of my kids, he like went to go work at some soup kitchen in a poor area and it was great for him. At first he was like, I don't know why I have to do this. but then he did it, and he loved doing it.
Yeah,
he loved
sure.
meeting the people. He loved serving the community, being a part of society in a positive way.
Right.
Not just me. I'm in this,
Right.
and so that's where, I mean, and social media obviously does a lot to work against that kind of stuff.
It
right?
does it every day. Yep. Yep.
And so, most societies will collapse on themselves if there's no
Mutual obligation.
mutual obligation to your fellow man.
Yeah.
It's like we
and-
live as brothers, not as enemies.
And now, we're in the process of, confusing rights with entitlements, right? It's like you have the right to free speech. Everyone does, but you're not entitled to an audience.
Right, and that's what I tell people. I say, you know what? I'm all for, equal rights for everyone, but you're asking for extra rights.
Right.
It's there's a huge difference in that. Just because you think that everything should be a right, it's not really the case. Constitutionally, it's not a right.
Right.
And it wouldn't even be practical for everyone to have that right.
And there's the other side. You have the right to pursue happiness, but you're not. You don't have the right to be handed it or it to
Right.
be handed to you. You have the right to fair employment, but you're not entitled to keep a job you're not doing. There's a lot here that we're kind of unpacking all this, and I think this is a thorn in society that we're having to deal with now, like we never have before.
Right. Yeah, and I think part of it is the fact that religion has been demonized in so many ways. In certain cases, some of the religious organizations have been their own worst enemies.
Right.
But you take a lot of that religion and belief and faith. You take a lot of hearts out of people because government can't replace that.
No, and government doesn't
A
care.
government bureaucrat
They have
can't
no
teach you to do that.
You're just a phone call. You're just a phone call. They're not picking up.
Right?
And
And they're the people there watching the clock, aren't they?
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. It's like they're the first ones out at 3 o'clock. Right. And we're trapped in waiting for someone else to go first. And my side of this is, why don't you go first?
Right.
Why don't you open the door for someone? Why don't you care about someone? Why don't you move forward society instead of pulling society back?
Right. And that's where everyone's got to have that heart for society. There've been cases, where I've heard stories and I've said to friends, I'm like, we got to do something about this.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, what are we going to do? I don't know. Well, let's figure it out. And then we'll do it. We'll have fundraisers or whatever it'll be.
Right.
Just to right a wrong.
Right.
You
or
know?
to help. Yeah. I mean, I get it.
It's-
Nobody wants to be the sucker who starts caring again, in a world that stopped. I mean, understandably, but that's how, we get to society, fulfilling people,
Hey, one of the things, not to reference my kids again, but I'm going to. One of the things that, as a wise parent, I say to my kids, I'm like, you know what? There are going to be posers out there. They're going to be people with these fake attitudes. They're going to oh, I'm so great, whatever. I'm like, you know what? The best thing you can be is a decent person who works hard, because like they always say, karma, right? Karma's like a bitch when it works against you. Because, if people say, you know what, he's a decent guy, he works hard, I'm going to trust him, I'm going to give him my business, as opposed to the guy who's pissed me off and irritated me for years, right?
Right.
And it's this guy buys some bling or whatever, kind of materialistic stuff they show, but they don't get that doesn't get you the respect. It's in the long run, it's the person who works hard and treats people decently who succeeds in the end.
Yeah, I tell you, and it's a big, it's funny because I do this entrepreneur, what do you call it?
Round table?
Round table. And it's a bunch of kids from college. And the one thing, they asked, hey, what's one thing you can tell us about being an entrepreneur? And I said, you don't have to like everyone, but treat everyone like your friend.
Right.
And treat everyone like your best friend.
Because you know what? Even if you don't like someone, they may end up writing you a check for something at one point. That
well,
you
and
appreciate.
either that or maybe they're just having a bad day.
Yeah.
I guess, there's a lot of people I went, I don't like that guy. And then like the second or third time I meet him, I'm like, oh,
It's
you know
not
what?
that bad, right?
He's all right. Yeah, I can deal with him,
Right.
So it's just, maybe just caught him on a bad day, And,
Very true.
Yeah. We're all waiting for someone else to go first. It's not society anymore. That's a bunch of strangers standing in a room, blaming each other for the smell,
Right. No, that's very true.
And like, in closing, the answer isn't waiting for society to fix itself. It's too slow. It's too broken.
It's good to be proactive.
We have to step up. Start local, your team, your neighbor, your family. Hold yourself to standards. And I like this, right? Hold yourself to standards even when nobody's watching.
Right.
It doesn't matter that no one's watching. Don't steal that money.
You sleep better at night.
Right. Especially when nobody's watching, right?
Living life looking over your shoulder is no way to do it.
No. And I'm telling you, shit catches up, and
because it does. It's almost like in, my flipping business. It's like my business partner and I will go into a property. We're like, because I've seen plenty of like half-assed flips where people just like, throw carpeting paint and put some patches on things and it sucks. It's a crappy property, but we go into a property, we clean it up, and we do quality work. We don't take shortcuts with the idea that we don't have to look over our shoulder after closing. Because I'd never want to have to deal with some lawsuit after closing and say, oh, you didn't disclose this or whatever. It's like we walk away, we're like, you can trust this.
Stainless.
Right.
It's stainless. We know the property is good. And we're happy for people to live there and make a life for themselves.
And that's a reputation that you get then. We're like, yeah, you can trust this guy.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's, that's the kind of thing. Like you said, it all catches up to you if you're doing things half-assed or illegitimate. Right.
Well, and that's real respect for humans, right? It's for yourself and others. Actually, the counterculture move is right now for everyone. It's time to turn this thing around. Time to, plug the holes in the ship. It's time to, set a course and go in the right direction for society.
Right.
Don't be the person who shows up with their hands out. Be the person who shows up. Yeah. And this is like truly to my heart, man. We got to work on this shit. So
very true.
But yeah, well, this has been another episode of Jamie and Chris Don't Be an Idiot. I'm Jamie. That's Chris. And you guys, go out there, be friendly to everyone. Work on society for us.
Let us know if you've heard of experienced anything where you've seen shoddy work or careless work that almost cost a life or like got someone injured.
Yeah, and also, hey, like I say every show, like, subscribe, comment. We need all of you. Appreciate it. We all love you. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.